Welcome to Explore Classroom. My name is Jennifer Bergen. I'm a teacher and a National Geographic Explorer, and I am so glad that you are joining us today. Many of our viewers are celebrating Rosh Hashanah today, and all of us at National Geographic wish you a joyful new year. Shana Tova. At National Geographic, we use the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world. Explorer Classroom connects students worldwide with our National Geographic Explorers for short lessons and time for your questions. This school year, each month will be organized around a specific theme. In this September, Explorer Classroom will be exploring different ecosystems and the importance of conservation. Today, our guests are Vladimir Russo and Rob Taylor. Vladimir, or Vladi, as we'll call him today, is a storyteller from Angola, a country in southern Africa, who is very interested in environmental education. He has written stories for children and adults to help them better understand Angola's environment and biodiversity. Rob Taylor is an ecologist from southern Africa who is fond of aquatic plants and invertebrates. He loved growing up in a provincial park where his father worked, and that love continues to help protect African wilderness today, especially rivers and the wildlife there. Together, Vladi and Rob are a part of a team helping protect the Okavango River Basin. This is a huge expanse of wilderness across many countries in the southern part of Africa, where people, animals, and habitats depend on a healthy river basin to survive and thrive. Today, Vladi and Rob will share why this river basin is important to protect and how special it is, not just to Southern Africa, but to the entire world. But before we get into today's lesson, I'd like to welcome our registered viewers who join us from around the globe. Let's give a shout out to Valley View Elementary in West Virginia, Kalispell Middle School in Montana, Elwood Memorial in Canada, Ibime Montes in Mexico, Supernova School in Pakistan, the Berman family, and all of our homeschoolers out there. We are so thrilled to have you here. And with that, let's get this Explorer Classroom started. It is time to turn it over to Rob and Vladi to share all about conserving the Okavango River Basin. Take it away, you two.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my slideshow now?
We sure can. It looks great, Rob.
Great. Okay, so this is a picture of me in my happy place. I've got a big net and I'm catching aquatic insects in the Okavango. But let me give you a bit of a background of how I got here. I grew up in a World Heritage Site. It's a park in the southern part of Africa. You can see that little pink dot there. And my father was the ecologist at this park. And when I was growing up, all I wanted to do was become an ecologist like my dad. And every weekend I would be out with my dad and helping him with his field work. I would love to be out catching creatures, whether it was small fish or frogs or insects, or in this case, a crab. And then as I grew up, I went to university and I studied ecology. Ecology is the study of ecosystems, ecosystems being all the living things that those are your plants and your animals, and then all the non-living things, your soils, water, your climate, everything, and how it all interacts and lives together. And I found that fascinating, and I still find it fascinating. And then here I am today I'm still catching little creatures. Here I'm with a little fish that I caught, and I'm working for the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project. And this is an amazing photo. This is taken by a NASA astronauts on the International Space Station, and he's looking down at the Earth. So you can see the curvature of the Earth there. And there's that huge wetland in the middle there, and that is the Okavango Delta. That's where I am based and where I work. And you can see the two major rivers that flow into the Okavango. They start right up in the north there in a country called Angola. They flow down through another country, Namibia, and down into the country where I am now in Botswana. And the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project conducts expeditions along all these rivers, and we travel on these boats. They're called makoro, and we use these long poles to pull them down the rivers. We fill up these boats with up to 500 kilograms of research equipment, of food, and camping equipment. And then these expeditions will last several months, and we're completely self-sufficient, paddling down these rivers through the most pristine wilderness in Africa. We camp under the stars. We cook our food on campfires. It's an absolute privilege to be able to experience this. And on these expeditions, we have a small team of scientists. They are hydrologists, people who study water. There's ecologists like myself, and then a whole other, other scientists with different specialities. And we want to understand these systems. We want to understand these systems because we can then conserve the systems, these ecosystems, and we can better and conserve the services that these systems provide. And these ecosystem services are things like food. People rely on fish from the Okavango Delta to survive as protein, and building materials such as reeds for building roofs and poles for building structures. Obviously, there's fresh water. We can drink the water straight up from the river. That's how clean it is. And a big thing is that people travel from all over the world to come and see these beautiful ecosystems. So it's a very important thing. But you can ask, why am I catching insects and invertebrates? And the important reason is that these invertebrates are an important part of the ecosystem. They're often very small. Here you can see it's like the size of a pinhead at the end of my dropper. This is a water beetle, and everything else, a lot of other things eat them. So if you start to lose these invertebrates, your whole system can collapse. So they're very important. And by looking at what species you have, you can tell how healthy the system is. And here in the Okavango, we have lots of invertebrates. This is a water beetle. Look at those ferocious mandibles. This is a back swimmer, and he swims on his back so that he can eat off the surface of the water. This is a creeping water bug, a little water mite, a dragonfly larvae that will hatch out, grow wings and become a big dragonfly. This is a water bug, but it's a daddy. The mommy has laid its eggs on his back, and he will look after those eggs all the way until they hatch out. Amazing. Yeah, so, and there's a snail and a mosquito larvae and a damselfly, and all of these tell a story about how the ecosystem is surviving. But I want to suggest that it doesn't have to be up to people, ecologists like myself, that to go look and see how healthy your ecosystems are. And anyone can go out and catch some bugs and identify them and look at your ecosystem. So I would recommend that you get a jar or borrow a sieve from your kitchen and see what you can catch in your garden or in your park, and take it to your teachers or your parents and see if together you can identify what you have. And there's super cool apps. There's this app called Seek. It's designed specifically for students, and you can take a photo of any bug or plant or animal. It will identify it for you, and it'll even give you background information, and you can have challenges and see what you can find. And it's a fantastic design, as I say, for kids, so none of your location or your information is shared. It's just fantastic. So I hope that you can all go out and see what you can find in your gardens and in your parks. Thank you.
Wow, Rob, that was amazing. And you have a friend here today, Vladi. I think it's Vladi's turn to share with us. So Vladi, would you like to go ahead and tell us a bit about your work?
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Thanks for everyone. Hope you are all enjoying the presentation. Rob gave a very nice overview of the whole ecosystem and the animals that you can find on that specific ecosystem, and all the beautiful creatures, some a bit more uglier than others, but I think all creatures that are part of the web of life, which we are all part of that. So my section, and because I am from Angola, I'm going to talk about the Angolan perspective, but starting with a very simple drawing. It is part of one of my books that is about the water cycle. This is probably what is most known by you in terms of what the water cycle. You've got water coming down the river, from the mountains to the river and get into the ocean, and then evaporating again, transforming into clouds, being moved by the wind, and then raining. So you've got precipitation. So and then this is the cycle of the water. It keeps on, on running this way. Sometimes we have more water, and sometimes we have less water. Sometimes we have big thunderstorms. Sometimes we have drought. So it's all changing all the time, and it depends on how we take care of the water. If we pollute the water or if we clean the water. So everything is about water. And one fascinating aspect of the water is that our body is like 70% made of water. So it's very important for us. It's important for us to drink water. Yes, keep hydrating. And when we are doing exercise, we sweat, water gets out of our body, we drink water, it comes in. But where does this water come from? The water that we have in our bottles, the waters that we use to cook our food. This always comes from a source of water that can be a river, can be a lake, can be an underground source of water. So this is the most common water cycle that you see, water coming from the mountains, going to a river, and always, but most of the times, ending on the sea, on the river mouth or on an estuary. So if you live near the sea, you should go and look to see how these estuaries are different, how the river mouths are there, okay? But now, moving to the next slide, we will look into a different ecosystem. As I say, Rob shared a lot of photos, but this is just to show you how this river flows from Angola going to Botswana, where Rob lives. And it's important that to know that this river changes its name from the source to the sand. As I say, most of the rivers you will see that they come from the mountains or from a spring and they end at the sea. This is a different river. This is a very special stream of different rivers, lots of rivers in the area, and they start from a source, but when they go to Botswana, instead of going to the sea, they end up on the sand. As Botswana is a landlocked country, doesn't have coast, so it doesn't have an estuary or a river mouth. But as I say, this river changes its name, so it's very curious. In Angola, it's called Kubango, one of the biggest river. It's called Kubango. When it changes the borders, when it goes, running south and crosses from Angola to another country called Namibia, it becomes Kavango. And then he carries on his flow until he gets to Botswana, and it's called Okavango. And why is that? It's because the river is made of lots of stories, and the stories are told by people like us, by human beings, and they give names, different names to different things, and this is what happens to the river. It has different stories. Of course, it's important to protect the water, but this water feeds people, feeds animals, and the stories tell us what happens, what has happened in the past, but also what will happen in the future. Remember the photo that Rob showed you about, the photo from NASA showing all different streams, all different rivers full of water and lots of vegetation that is supported by the water. So then we've learned a little bit about the names, and it's important when you get to close to your community, close to the place you live, try to understand the history of the rivers, the names of the rivers. Why are they called what they are? I think this is important exercise for you to look at it. If we move to the next slide, you will see again this web of rivers. It's a river that goes up and down, right and left. It looks very confusing, but it takes its course from source to sand. As I say, very few rivers in the world, they start in a source and end up in sand. They usually go to the sea, and that's why it's important to protect. It's because it provides water for everyone. As I say, we depend on water, all human beings, all living things that Rob shared with you depend on water, because there are special people that also can preserve, people that are living there, and even people that are living far from that source of water, from those rivers. They can help to protect by water conservation measures, protecting your own resources so we don't use too much of our water, and because it's unique for plants and animals, as Rob has showed you. So it's a different water cycle, doesn't go from the mountain or from the source to the sea, but is still very beautiful, houses lots of animals, aquatic animals, bird life, other time grassy animals. It's a beautiful ecosystem. Thank you for listening.
Wow, Vladi and Rob, thank you so much for this incredible presentation and about why this river basin is so important and why Okavango River Basin is worth conservation efforts. I bet many of our viewers who are joining in right now are wanting to join in your work, but maybe we live really far away. How can we do work like you where we live in our own communities? Oh, Rob, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Definitely, if you're wanting to look at how your ecosystems are surviving, and it's anyone can go into your rivers and see what invertebrates you have, or what any creatures. So in Africa we have programs for children to go in and catch invertebrates, and they can assess the invertebrates. And I'm sure that in North America and or all over the world there will be different programs like that. So you can look and choose your local river health program, or see yes, and see how your ecosystem, your local ecosystems are, how well they are functioning.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. And also, thank you for telling us about the app Seek. And then Vladi, I know that you mentioned find out why our rivers have the names that they do. I don't think many people often find out why our rivers have certain names. So thank you for all those calls to action. If you are watching and you are like me and you want to help out, can you give us an air high five? Ready? We're in for the rivers. We are ready to help support you two and the rivers of our world. Well, it's the moment that many of you have been waiting for. It's question time. If you are watching online, go ahead and start putting all your great questions in the chat bar. You only need to type them once. We record them all, and we'll get to as many as we can. If you're an adult, an educator, a parent, or just an awesome viewer, make sure you tell us who is asking the question and what grade they're in. That way we can give you a shout out. Also, since we have 2 guests today, let us know if you have a specific question for one of our special guests. All right, so we have a question coming in from a YouTube viewer who says, how come the river is named Kubango, Kovango, Okavango? We know it's because of the different countries, but are they different languages and do they have the same meaning?
Exactly. Okay, that's a spot on question. The names derive from the language that people speak, and because they speak different languages, they give the name a different name. So everyone that is working on a specific area or living, in this case, living in an area, they look at a specific, a river in this case, and because it relates to themselves, they give a name to that river. But the languages are different, the tribes are different, but they've got some similarities. That's why the names are not completely different. You will see there is another river in Luanda that is called Kwando, but when you get to Botswana, it's called Chobi. Okay, so it's a quite different name there, okay? But for this one here, they look like the same kind of communities. So through history, and because I remember boundaries are something different, recent, maybe 200 years, in the Berlin agreements when, boundaries were developed for the different countries. But people, they don't see boundaries. Those are imaginary lines. So for them, they actually have been, for the past 3, 4, 5 centuries, same families. So that's why you see in this particular case, very subtle changes in the names, but they have meanings for people that are living in the area. So for example, the area that we are working, myself and Rob and many other explorers inclusive, it's called Lizima landscape. And Lizima in the local language means source of life. Lizima liamono. In a language called Luchazi, for the Lukazi people, it is the source of life. So there is always meaning on those words.
I love how you explain that, Vladi. It makes sense that these names are for people, because I don't think the elephants change the name when they're traveling, or the invertebrates change the name. They just call it home. Well,
yeah, I'm sure people have seen, for example, the name of Simba, the lion. Okay, remember that movie? Okay, so Simba in some local languages is the lion. Okay, so that's why he has that specific name.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for teaching us, Vladi. Speaking of invertebrates, this is for Rob. One of our guests named Gina wants to know, what is your favorite insect or your favorite invertebrate?
By far my favorite insect and invertebrate is a dragonfly. I love dragonflies. They're passionate. I've always had a passion for dragonflies. I think they're amazing. They start off completely aquatic. They're top predators. They're ferocious predators. They eat everything underwater. Eat all the worms and even some small fish they'll eat, and then they hatch out and become beautiful dragonflies as we know them. And my favorite one is a black emperor, and it's huge. It's about 13 or 14 centimeters long. It's a massive thing. But they were even when the dinosaurs were around, there were some dragonflies and they got huge. So they're just amazing creatures.
Oh, I would love to see one someday. We have a question for both of you. This comes from Addie, who is a 3rd grader in Texas. And Addie wants to know, how deep does the Okavango River get?
Yeah, in places on the Okavango going through Namibia, it gets to about 3 meters in places. I don't know below the waterfalls in Angola. I don't know if they get deeper there, Vladdy.
Yeah, in some cases you can get, maybe 4.5 meters, but not more than that. Yeah, so they are not very deep. rivers. They get sometimes they're quite wide. It depends, from where they are, but still carry lots of water.
Vladi, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the river change throughout the year? It grows and shrinks depending on the weather?
Yes, unlikely in the States, for example. In Angola, we only have 2 seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. So when the rainy season starts, which is about now in September, the river flow keeps on increasing, and probably, towards April, March, April, we have big rains, and then you can get flooded areas, so it becomes a bit more wider than in sun and in other areas. So probably from May to August, it shrinks a little bit, but it all depends on the water flow, on the water cycle. And remember that even in the dry season, there is a constant flow, reduced but a constant flow, because you have some sort of soil and plants that work like a sponge, and they kind of get the water, hold the water, and when there is no rain, just slowly releases the water, and it keeps on flowing throughout the year, even during the dry season.
And to add to that, there's an amazing thing is that because where I am in Botswana, it's so far away from where the rains are up in Angola, where Vladi is, that it'll take a few months so the flood only arrives here in the middle of our winter when it's not raining at all. So it's incredible, that delay. And then suddenly in June, July, so in the middle of our winter in the southern hemisphere, there's this huge flood that arrives in the Okavango, so in the Delta. So it's an amazing phenomenon.
We have a question coming from a 2nd grade class. It's Miss Bolton's class in Germantown, Tennessee. And they want to know, where are the best places to catch invertebrates?
That's brilliant. That's lovely. Often on the edges of your rivers, you'll find, so for aquatic invertebrates, on the edge of the rivers where there's vegetation hanging in the water, there's a lot of life that sits in there. The other place that is very popular for aquatic invertebrates is underneath the rocks in the river. And so you can actually pick them up. A lot of the invertebrates like to cling to rocks, and then they catch little bits of plant matter or animals that drift down the river, and they'll eat them. But otherwise, on terrestrial, you'll find invertebrates everywhere. Anywhere you look in your garden, a lot of things come to flowers and or fruit or anything that's rotting. There's all sorts of lots of places to look for invertebrates.
Well, we heard about Rob's favorite animal, the dragonfly, specifically the emperor dragonfly, right?
Yes.
But Margot in kindergarten wants to know, Vladi, do you have a favorite animal at the river?
Yes, I do. I think, it's a fierceful animal that we have there. It's the crocodile. I really like the way that it moves around. Yes, it's got very big teeth and very sharp teeth. And it helps to balance the ecosystem. Sometimes it's very dangerous not only for animals, but for people that go and wash their clothes or get the water from the river. So we need to keep an eye on them. But it's a beautiful animal. It gets quite long, quite heavy, but still quite agile. So one needs to be very careful. And that's on the river. That's definitely my favorite animal.
I'm with you, Vladi. I think they're so fascinating, but I love dragonflies because they catch mosquitoes. Well, I want to thank both of you for your time today, just for your expertise, but also sharing your joy and your passion with us. Thank you for your time, Vladi and Rob.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I hope that all the kids enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been brilliant being on here.
Well, friends, if you can't get enough of the Okavango River Basin, there are so many resources. We're going to tell you more about them in a minute. But also, Rob and Vladdy will be on a show later this week for older kids. So tell those older friends, and why not tune in again yourself? We'll have different questions. We want to say thank you to all of our students, our families, and our educators who are out there joining us today. And we hope that you'll consider coming to our next event. Our next event for ages 4 through 8 will be October 3rd, so just a week away. We're going to join explorer Jens Bonor, and we're going to hear about the importance of the Biobío River in Chile. We're going to learn why he considers this river a part of his family, and you will not want to miss this. So go ahead, register for all of this and more resources. Go to natgeoed.org/Explorer Classroom. You can request a chance to be featured on screen. And teachers, we have created something new just for you. It's an interactive guide you can share with your students. You can take them on a learning journey with every single guest on our show. We hope that you'll also find the Explorer Mindset in Action Guide. This is for teachers, and the edition is linked on each event when you register. So lots of goodies out there for you. Well, have a great day, everyone. Shana Tova, go catch some invertebrates, learn the name of your local river, stay curious, and